See if I can figure this out real quick. Does that sound all right? All right. I was talking to Adam before church, and I said, I'm not sure if it's going to be easier with less people to talk to. I know for sure I'm going to miss looking over at Lisa Smith because she's always sitting there and her eyes are real big, and I don't care what I'm saying. She's just nodding, I don't care if I'm praying or giving an invitation, So for somebody that doesn't like to talk in public, that's helpful, And then also, I guess I'm going to go on the fly here and say, I think your song selection is excellent because I want to talk about God's faithfulness. I'm using, the Joshua verse about being strong and courageous, so that's perfect. Now that I went off the cuff here, I'm just going to go back to my notes, and it's going to not quite be smooth, but I've always considered myself a methodical person, as you just saw. My brain works kind of like in a series of cause and effects. I've never, ever been accused of being what you'd call a dreamer. I watch like interviews with rock stars or movie stars, and they're always, at some point, they're like, yeah, the young people, they just got to really follow their passion, never give that up, just keep working, And, like some people, they'll grow up and, I wanted to be a police officer since I was 3 years old. And then I just always did that, and I became a police officer. And none of that has ever been my problem. I got to college and had no idea what I was going to do. I finished my first year towards a liberal arts degree, and my dad's like, all right, decision time, man. You're spending money now. Got to quit spinning your wheels. I had no idea what I wanted to do for 40 hours a week. I had no passion for paperwork. I did work through high school at a nursery, and I really liked working outside and that kind of thing, but I didn't really see myself at 60 years old digging ditches somewhere. I'm methodical. I was looking ahead. So when I started to look at my degree options, I looked at pay, I looked at job availability. I looked at, what options would I have if the current job I had, if I didn't want it. I was talking with my dad, and he said, there's a nursing shortage right now. That might be an option. And, it checked the boxes. The pay was pretty good. I could always get a job. I'd never have to look for a job. And if I didn't like my job, there's a lot of different things in nursing I could do, I've done everything from critical care to working in the cath lab, and now I fly on a helicopter. So I can have a lot of options with that. So I thought that'd be great. I'd get a job, I'd start a 401k, I'd limit my spending, and then, I'd retire with no issue at a relatively young age. And I was like, that's a good plan. That's foolproof. I am so smart. So my plan didn't go exactly right. I got into nursing. I discovered that dealing with the general public on probably some of their worst days, it's usually not pleasant. Working conditions can often be hectic and stressful. And then, there are good jobs. I like the job I have now. But finding a position like that is actually really hard because the majority of nursing jobs are very difficult. So the good jobs, everybody wants them, and there's a few jobs and a lot of nurses. So it took me a long time to get to a job that didn't make me miserable. But I got there. My job plays to my strengths. I have a good schedule. I get to see my kids a lot. Things were finally falling in place. Then COVID. 2020 really taught me a lot about my focus. I learned a lot of valuable lessons. So during the whole COVID thing, the government shut down like all elective procedures at the hospitals. So that's stuff that's not life-threatening. You know, you don't go to get moles removed. You don't, you know, lots of stuff that they would deem that it was safe to wait. They shut all that down. So while we were waiting for COVID to hit and actually make everyone sick, all of a sudden there was too many nurses. They were overpaid and unnecessary. So they started laying everybody off. And thousands of people suddenly didn't have a job in the St. Louis area. My company started shutting down bases or opening them for like temporary hours. And I started to freak out a little bit. I was like, my plan does not work. My plan was I'm going to do something whether I like it or not because I don't want to ever have to look for a job. And here I am doing that, and I'm looking for a job. So I freaked out enough. I started doing Uber Eats. And I remember vividly, I came home, and it had been probably 10, 11 hours. I had been driving, delivering food to people all over the city. Thought I was going to get mugged once. I think I made $130, and I didn't take into account the gas I spent for driving for 10 hours. And I came home, and the kids had eaten, and Melissa was cleaning up the kitchen, and I sat in the corner of the kitchen on our chair, and I was looking at the house, and I was looking at the family, and I was like, you know, I am helpless. There is nothing I can do to fix my situation. Nothing. I'm just going to have to ride this out. I'm going to have to see where it goes and just take what happens. So I had a little bit of a come apart, but the next day I kind of realized I was having a pity party, and I realized, you know, I have not prayed about this even a single time. I was so busy planning and trying to figure things out and do things on my own that I didn't even ask God. So that was the beginning of the lesson. So I really started to examine my headspace. I started to explore the idea of faith. The idea that faith is not just believing that God exists. You know, I mean, I've had that struggle, but it's been a long time since I've ever considered the fact that God wasn't there. I've worked past that point in my life, but now I'm looking at, I need to have a faith that believes that God is the ultimate point, the ultimate goal, the purpose of everything that I'm doing. I need to have faith that God will take care of me because I'm his child, and he's said that he will take care of me, and also that he knows best. So that's the concept that I want to explore tonight. I'm going to be reading out of Numbers. You might want to turn there. It's going to be a little bit of a long reading. But the reason I want to do this long reading is because I'm trying to explore a concept of how the people of Israel, how they thought, how they reacted, what their focus was. And I think just cherry picking verses is not going to give us the idea. It's a story that we're all familiar with. It's the children of Israel. They've seen the plagues in Egypt. They've come through the Red Sea. They saw God destroy Pharaoh's army. They saw a lot of other various miracles, and now they're on the edge of the promised land. And they're going to send in the 12 spies. All right, they're going to take this land that God has given them. So I'm going to start in Numbers 13. We're just going to read most of the way through chapter 14, but I'll try not to stumble on any of these weird names. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the people of Israel. From each tribe of the fathers you shall send a man, everyone a chief among them." So Moses sent them from the wilderness of Paran, according to the command of the Lord, all of them men who were heads of the people of Israel. Then he lists the names. I'm not going to read all those. So in verse 17, Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan and said to them, "Go up into the Negeb and go up into the hill country and see what the land is, and whether the people who dwell in it are strong or weak, whether they are few or many, and whether the land that they dwell in is good or bad, and whether the cities that they dwell in are camps or stronghold, and whether the land is rich or poor, and whether there are trees in it or not. Be of good courage and bring some of the fruit of the land." Now the time was the season of the first ripe grapes. So they went up and they spied out the land, from the wilderness of Zin to Rehob near Lebahamath. And they went up into the Negeb and came to Hebron, Ahiman, Sheshai, Talmai. The descendants of Anak were there. Hebron was built 7 years before his own in Egypt. And they came to the valley of Eshcol and cut down from there a branch with a single cluster of grapes. And they carried it on a pole between the two of them. They also brought some pomegranates and figs, and that place was called the Valley of Eshcol, because of the cluster that the people of Israel cut down from there. At the end of 40 days, they returned from spying out the land, and they came to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation of the people of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. And they told him, "We came to the land to which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. However, the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the Negeb. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the hill country, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the Jordan." Excuse me. But Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and occupy it, for we are well able to overcome it." Then the men who had gone up with him said, "We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we are." So they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land that they had spied out, saying, "The land through which we have gone to spy it out is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people that we saw in it are of great height. And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come from the Nephilim, and we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them also." Then all the congregation raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night. And all the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation said to them, "Would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become a prey. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt?" And they said to one another, "Let us choose a leader and go back to Egypt." Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the people of Israel. And Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes and said to all the congregation of the people of Israel, "The land which we passed through to spy it out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their protection is removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them." Then all the congregation said to stone... Excuse me, too much reading, I guess. Then all the congregation said to stone them with stones, but the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of meeting to all the people of Israel. And the Lord said to Moses, "How long will this people despise me, and how long will they not believe in me, in spite of all the signs that I have done among them? I will strike them with pestilence and disinherit them, and I will make you a nation greater and mightier than they." But then Moses intercedes. He says, "Then the Egyptians will hear of it, for you brought up your people in your might from among them, and they will tell the inhabitants of this land they have heard that you, O Lord, are in the midst of this people. For you, O Lord, are seen face to face, and your cloud stands over them, and you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. Now, if you kill this people as one man, then the nations who have heard your fame will say, 'It is because the Lord was not able to bring his people into the land that he swore to give them, that he has killed them in the wilderness. And now please let the power of the Lord be as great as you have promised, saying, the Lord is slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, forgiving iniquity and transgression, but he will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children, the third and the fourth generation. Please pardon the iniquity of the people according to the greatness of your steadfast love, just as you have forgiven this people from Egypt until now.' Then the Lord said, 'I have pardoned according to your word, but truly as I live, and as all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord, none of the men who have seen my glory and my signs that I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, yet have put me to the test these 10 times, and have not obeyed my voice, shall see the land that I swore to give to their fathers. And none of those who despise me shall see it. But my servant Caleb, because he is a different spirit and has followed me fully, I will bring into the land into which he went, and his descendants shall possess it. Now since the Amalekites and Canaanites dwell in the valleys, turn tomorrow and set out for the wilderness by the way to the Red Sea.'" And then this is pretty poignant here. "And the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, 'How long shall this wicked congregation grumble against me? I have heard the grumblings of the people of Israel, which they grumble against me. Say to them, as I live, declares the Lord, what you have said in my hearing I will do. Your dead bodies shall fall in this wilderness, and all of your number listed in the census from 20 years old and upward who have grumbled against me, not one shall come into the land where I swore that I would make you dwell, except Caleb the son of Jephunneh and Joshua the son of Nun. But your little ones, who you said would become a prey, I will bring in, and they shall know the land that you have rejected. But as for you, your dead bodies shall fall in the wilderness.'" All right, so that was a long reading, and I apologize, but you kind of see the idea of how the people were thinking. So first off, at the beginning of 13, God says, "Send these spies." So I started thinking, why did God send spies? God has no need for a tactical advantage. So he wants to show the people something. So the people go in and they see the land, and they also see the people of the land. So God wanted them to see that what he had promised was there, and he also wanted to show the people that they weren't going to get that land that he promised with their own power. This is a constant message that God has shown to his people up to this point through Egypt. And we're going to see ahead what happens. Reading ahead, the Israelites thought that they would obtain the land under their own power, and they attempted it at one point. So let's look. What did the spies see? 1323 was a cluster of grapes that needed 2 men to carry it. I mean, that's pretty impressive. It was full of milk, honey, and fruits fitting the land of the promise. All these verses that describe these things basically just sum up everything there was what God said it was going to be. God is faithful to the promise that he made. But what was the report from the spies? In 31, they're like, yes, it is everything God said. We want it. but there's no way to get it. They say those that are in the land are stronger than we are. So why are they stronger? So you look, verse 32 of chapter 13. So they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land that they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone to spy out is a land that devours its inhabitants. All the people are of great height. Earlier they had said that there's fortified cities. But this part about the great height, they're giants. They're bigger than we are. They are measuring themselves against another guy. And I understand that. I don't know if anybody's been in a physical altercation or a physical situation with somebody that's bigger than them. I was working in an ICU one time. We had a 600-pound guy, and he was almost 7 foot tall. He was having respiratory problems, so he basically passed out. We put a breathing tube down, but they thought he had brain damage, so there was no sedation. All of a sudden, everything starts to work because he's breathing now, and he woke up, and my friend Matt was in the room. We were both in there. The guy wakes up, jumps out of bed, attached to everything, tube down his throat, picks up Matt, who is 6'2", by his throat and held him up against the wall. And 2 girls ran in trying to help me. There was a girl hanging on either arm of this guy, who was sick, by the way. And I eventually just had to leave the room and get some drugs and just let him fall onto the floor after I drugged him. But what I'm trying to describe here is, in a world where you're using a sword, you're using sticks and rocks to fight people, I'm going to be scared. These people are huge. I don't want to go fight them. But God, again, is saying, I have something else I want you to look at. Your headspace is not right. So, what was the right headspace? Joshua and Caleb in verse 30, they said, let's go up at once and occupy it, for we're well able to overcome it. They said, man, let's quit wasting time. Let's do this. This is what we've been promised. Didn't you guys see back there? We walked away from Egypt. And behind us, God just killed them off. We didn't even have to mess with them. They knew where their power came from. So the people heard the 10 spies, and then they heard Joshua and Caleb. And what do you think they did? In 14:1, it says they wept. So I feel like that's a contrast of what they could be doing. They could be like, yes, let's take this land, man. God is giving us what we've been promised. But instead, they lack faith, and they start crying. And in 14:2, they look up from those tears, and they turn on Moses again. And then they decide, you know what? We got to go back to Egypt. It'd be better if we died in Egypt. How many times did they say that? They said it again. And then one thing I do want to reiterate. In 14, the end of verse 2, would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become prey. So they're saying, what kind of sick, twisted God would play games with us and bring us out here just so we could watch our wives and our children die? They just totally didn't get what God was trying to show them. And that was God's response in 14 and 11. How long will these people despise me? How long will they not believe in me, in spite of all the signs that I have done among them? So once again, God says, I've given you what you need. I've shown you what you need to have faith in me. I've shown you that the promise is real. and once again you've rejected me. So then God says, I'm going to wipe them out, but Moses pleads for the people. But he doesn't plead for the people for their sake. He pleads with God for the sake of God. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more, hopefully in a way that's understandable as we wrap up. But Moses got it. It's not for the people's sake. Everything is about God. God is the point. And we see that with his plead with God saying, if you kill these people, everyone else is going to think you're weak because everyone knows you took these people this far, and they'll say you couldn't finish the job. So God says, okay, I'm not going to kill him, but I'm going to teach you a lesson. So he says, none of these people who have seen my glory and my signs that I did in Egypt and in the wilderness and have still put me to the test, none of those people are going into the wilderness or going into the promised land. So then he really teaches them a lesson. In 14:3, he said, our wives and little ones, the people were worried. They said, our wives and little ones will become prey. They said, what kind of God would do that to our kids? But look, in 27, in verse 27, it says, I have heard the grumblings of the people of Israel, which they grumbled against me. What you have said in my hearing, I will do. He said, you guys are going to die. But then look down in 31. The little ones who you said would become prey, I'm going to bring them in. I'm going to give them the promised land. So he's saying, not only am I not letting your children and your wives die in the wilderness, I'm giving this to your children because you don't deserve it, but I'm showing that I am faithful to my promises. God had offered complete care and protection to his children, and they rejected his gifts, so his gifts were given to those that would accept them, which would be the children of Israel. So I see this as God kind of starting over. He's making them wander in the wilderness for 40 years. So why was that? Was it just to let these people die off? The new generations saw that God sustained the people for 40 years in the wilderness while the older generation died off. So God once again gave them the tools that they needed to have the faith in him. Also, in Joshua, later on where Joshua picks up, this is when the new generation is going to go into the land. Joshua, 1st chapter and verse 5. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you shall cause the people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. So the people saw that they were sustained for 40 years. God says, follow me. I'm going to do this. I'm still going to do this. And then to prove the point, he gets everybody to the Jordan before they cross over the Jordan. Starting in verse... Well, that's not what I wanted. There we go. Chapter 3, verse 7. Lord said to Joshua, I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, so that they may know that I was with Moses, so I will be with you. So he's not leaving them guessing. He's spelling things out. Joshua is in control. He has my blessing. And as for you, command the priests who bear the ark of the covenant, when you come to the brink of the waters of the Jordan, you shall stand still in the Jordan. And then so Joshua is explaining this to the people, and in verse 10 he says, "Here is how you shall know that the living God is among you, and that he will without fail drive out from before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, and the Jebusites." So we're setting up a big dramatic entrance, right? Something to really get people motivated, to give them faith, to build them up before they had to do a hard thing. In chapter 3, verse 14, "So when the people set out from their tents to pass over the Jordan, with the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant before the people, and as soon as those bearing the Ark had come as far as the Jordan, and the feet of the priests bearing the Ark were dipped in the brink of the water, the waters coming down from above stood and rose up in a heap very far away at Adam, the city that is beside Zarethan, and those flowing down toward the sea of Arabah, the salt sea, were completely cut off. And the people passed over opposite Jericho. Now the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stood firmly on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan, and all Israel was passing over on dry ground until all the nation finished passing over the Jordan." Once again, God gave you the tools. They passed over in this miraculous way because they're about to go take over Jericho. Now what are they doing? You guys remember that story. They didn't, get catapults and, whatever else and take over Jericho. God tells them, "Hey, go do a parade. We're going to take a week. We're just going to walk." I mean, who in their right mind would believe that marching around a city would make the walls fall down? But they did it. And we all know they were successful. They were successful because they believed God would be faithful to them, even if parading around a city made them look like lunatics to everybody that was inside. So they had great faith. And, Ed walked us through the whole book of Joshua. We saw that different instances where things would go bad, like with Achan, they would lose a battle. But when they had faith, there was no contest. They would just knock it out of the park. So when Israel followed God, God was with Israel. So that just leaves us with a few points, and I made this just in bullet point format because I figured it'd be just rambling at this point. So these are the takeaways. What does this teach us? This whole thing with Israel. Number one, God has the power to do what needs to be done. God has the wisdom to do what needs to be done. We do not have the power to do what we need to get done or what God needs to get done, and we don't have the wisdom to do it effectively. We fail when we don't realize that God is in control, but we succeed in ways we never thought possible when we just follow God's instruction. And putting it in bullet format like that probably loses a little effect. But if you think that out, that has serious ramifications on how you approach your life. I was talking earlier about the fear I had of losing my job. I mentioned I needed to have faith that God would take care of me and my family. But the important thing that I said was that I needed to have faith that God is the point. That means that God might not give me another job. I might lose my house. I might lose my car. I might have to move in with one of y'all. But our faith needs to be a faith that believes that God is in total control, not just partially. God has total control over everything. God knows the beginning and the end of all things. When I made my life plan at 19 years old to become a nurse, I didn't even know the beginning of things. I surely didn't know I was going to be standing where I am standing now. In contrast, though, God knows what matters. God has told us what matters to the extent that we need to know. He has shown us things that will build our faith so that we are not with a faith that has no substance. But God has also tried to show us the benefit of giving ourselves to him so that he can do great things through us. You know, the Israelites didn't knock down the walls of Jericho. They just walked around. But they went through the process. The result is God. The process is our responsibility. So, God has shown us that we can do things through him that are greater than anything we could possibly do on our own. We can defeat those giants. We can defeat whatever giants we meet in life if we let God defeat them instead of try to take them on by ourselves. So you have to ask yourself, what giants are you dealing with? Do you have financial problems? Is your home life a mess? Are you struggling with addiction? Do you simply lack focus and direction in life? Are you apathetic? You can probably bring up that song slide now if you want. So Paul said to the Philippians, I know how to be brought low. I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. So Paul says that whatever situation you're in, it doesn't matter. You don't ask, why has God done this to me? God is the point of everything. You ask yourself, I'm here. How do I use this situation to glorify God? No matter what happens after that, God is in control, and he's going to conquer anything in your way that needs to be conquered. God can fix whatever problem you have. He can fix whatever giant is in your way. He may not fix it the way you think it should be fixed, but he will fix it the way it needs to be fixed. One of the tools that God has given us to help with the giants that we face in our lives is his church. God's church is here to help you glorify God. So if you're ready to give yourself to God and let him be your strength, come to the front as we stand and sing, and we'll do what we can to help you.